At Thanksgiving, my sister discovered I had $12 million and my family demanded I give it to her, claiming she deserved it more. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let us keep this channel growing collectively. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. So I'm Sarah, 38, female, and I need to get this off my chest. Do you know those family dynamics in which one child can do no wrong while the other appears to be invisible? Yes, welcome to my life. Everything was very typical until I was 8. I was an only kid, and while my parents were not particularly warm and fuzzy, they were present, I suppose. Mom would help me with my homework, and Dad would occasionally take me fishing on Lake St. Clair. We weren't the Brady Bunch, but we were fine. Then came the night that would change everything. I recall my Aunt Kelly showing up at 2 a.m. and telling me to pack a suitcase because Mom was in the hospital. My sister, Rachel, was on her way, but something was wrong. She wasn't meant to arrive for another 2 months. The following few weeks were a flurry of hospital visits and hush chats. Rachel was really little. She looked like one of my baby dolls, but with all these tubes and cables, I wasn't allowed to touch her or get too close. That was the first time I felt it, an invisible wall forming between me and the rest of my family. When they eventually brought Rachel home, our house turned into a sterilized bubble. Mom had an obsession with germs. I'm talking industrial strength disinfection throughout, hand sanitizer stations in each room, and constant cleaning. The harsh odor of bleach still causes me distress to this day. But here's the bit that really messed me up. Whenever I showed the slightest symptom of illness, I was whisked off to either Grandma Marie's or Aunt Kelly's house. I mean every time. Sneeze once, pack your bags. A mild cough, you're off to see Grandma. At first, I thought it was enjoyable. Grandma Marie would make cookies, and Aunt Kelly had a fantastic collection of Nancy Drew books that I was working my way through. But children are not stupid. After a while, you begin to understand what is actually going on. You are not being sent away on adventures, you are being handled as a threat. As if your entire existence could damage your beloved sister. I tried everything to gain their attention in a healthier manner. Honestly, everything? Got all A's? Mom would scarcely look up from Rachel's most recent doctor's appointment calendar. Won first prize in the scientific fair with a project about renewable energy. Dad just asked if I could store the display board in the garage since Rachel is allergic to cardboard dust. Is this even a thing? The real kicker came when I was 12. For months, I'd been practicing for the school talent show, teaching myself to perform Bridge Over Troubled Water on the piano. I know it's a little too obvious. Rachel had a 99.1 degree Fahrenheit fever on the night of the show. Guess who did not have anyone in the audience? Meanwhile, 2 weeks later, the entire family, including both sets of grandparents, attended Rachel's 15-minute flute recital, during which she essentially killed hot cross buns. Rachel immediately learned how to use the system. By the age of 7, she had outgrown any real health difficulties, but that didn't stop her from performing. Headache? Must remain home from school. Feeling tired? Someone else, guess who, should perform her tasks. Worried about a test? Mom would literally call the school to have the deadline extended. I began spending more and more time in my room, immersed in books about art history and antiques. It's funny how life works out sometimes. My room became my sanctuary, mostly because Rachel claimed she was allergic to my lavender air freshener, so it was the only place she wouldn't go. Do you know what is actually wrong? When she pretended to be sick, a part of me felt grateful. At the very least, I'd be taken to Grandma Marie's, where someone would ask about my day or be interested in what I was about. Grandma was the one who sparked my interest in vintage jewelry. She had an incredible collection of costume pieces that she let me organize and catalog. I suppose I should have regarded it as prophetic. The worst thing wasn't even the clear favoritism. It was how they rewrote history to excuse their actions. Rachel just needs more attention because she had such a rough start. Sarah's always been so independent. Sarah understands that her sister has special needs. Number I did not comprehend. I was a child who didn't understand why having a good immune system made me less deserving of love. Looking back, I can see how these years shaped me. The persistent message that I was somehow unsafe or inconvenient to be around doesn't just go away. But hey, at least it taught me to be self-sufficient. When no one checks your homework or cares about your triumphs, you quickly learn to be your own cheerleader. High school, the majority of people either loved or loathed it. Me, I regarded it as a ticket out. While Rachel was establishing her drama empire in middle school, I was laying the groundwork for my own escape. And let me tell you, nothing inspires you to accomplish more than knowing that no one will do it for you. Remember how I said I spent hours sorting Grandma Marie's jewelry collection? That taught me a valuable lesson: the need for systematic organization and attention to detail. In high school, I approached everything with the same perspective. My desk at home resembled something out of an organization magazine: color-coded notes, meticulously organized study plans, and everything had its place. Rachel teased me about it, calling me Rain Man. Very great, sis. But here's the thing about being invisible: no one is monitoring your failures or successes. So do whatever the heck you want. I joined every club that would not interfere with my part-time employment at Carson's Diner. Thank you to Carol, the owner, for remembering my birthday when my own parents had forgotten. Debate team? Check. Who is the National Honor Society president? Check. Who is the editor-in-chief of the school newspaper? Check. The debate team was when I truly found my voice. There's something quite rewarding about shattering someone's argument while maintaining complete composure. It also taught me how to negotiate, which I didn't realize at the time but would be useful later. I've won states twice. Rachel had major soccer games, therefore my parents were unable to attend both competitions. She was on the C team, did not even play. The game changer the junior year was when things truly became interesting. I took the SAT and received a flawless score. Not like, oh, pretty good, perfect. I mean, perfect. 1600. You know how many people receive that? Less than 1%. I remember staring at the results screen for almost 20 minutes, convinced it was an error. I rushed home to tell my parents. I realized this is stupid. Mom was in the kitchen assisting Rachel with her English homework. The conversation went something like this. My reaction: Mom. Look, I got a perfect SAT score. Mama. That's nice, honey, but can you keep it down? Rachel's trying to concentrate. She has a big test tomorrow. Rachel, you're correct. Yeah, some of us actually have to study, Miss Perfect. She said. Rachel, sweetie, don't stress. You're just a different kind of learner. I still have the hard copy of those SAT results someplace. Never got pinned on the fridge. But Rachel's C+ in English? That infant received primo refrigerator real estate, complete with a "we're so proud of you" magnet. College applications. The college application procedure was interesting. I applied to 15 schools without informing anyone. I wrote all of my own essays, gathered my own recommendations, and handled all of the financial assistance paperwork myself. My guidance advisor, Mr. Chen, was the true MVP. My parents were too busy to help me with the FAFSA, so I stayed late after school. Then acceptances began to arrive. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Michigan, and each one comes with a scholarship offer. I stored them all in a locked box under my bed, knowing what would happen if Rachel discovered them. They'd suddenly shifted their focus entirely to her. But if Sarah goes to Harvard, I'll be all alone. Or some nonsense like that. The day I received my full ride offer from UMich, Rachel joined JV cheerleading. Guess which one was celebrated with a family feast? Hint, I had microwave mac and cheese in my room while they went to Olive Garden. But, you know what? The scholarship was my golden ticket. Tuition, lodging and board are all included, as is a book allowance. I could finally leave that house, where I was either invisible or inconvenient. The day I received my acceptance package, I went to my favorite spot in the local library, a fourth-floor window seat overlooking the park, and grieved for an hour. Not sad tears. There were tears of relief. When I told my parents at supper that I was going to UMich, they were ecstatic. He said, Michigan? But that's so far. What if Rachel needs you? She replied, I hope you're not expecting us to help with expenses. Rachel's cheerleading competitions are very costly. Rachel is crying. Oh my God, finally. Can I have your room? I need space for my TikTok videos. The summer before college I worked double shifts at Carson's Diner to save money. Carol, bless her heart, always gave me additional tips and made sure I got to take home leftover pie at the conclusion of my shifts. She also taught me a vital skill: how to recognize genuine people in a society full of fakes. Baby, she'd tell me, in diners and in life, the ones making the most noise usually have the least to say. Move-in day at U Michigan? My folks couldn't attend because, surprise, Rachel had a cheerleading competition. Aunt Kelly drove me instead, helped me set up my dorm room, and gave me a $500 envelope. Your Grandma Marie wanted you to have this, she told me. She's so proud of you. Later, I learned that Grandma had been saving that money from her Social Security checks for months. That first night in my dorm room, I promised myself, I was going to create such a wonderful life that being overlooked would be inconceivable. Not for vengeance. Nothing to prove to my family. But what about the 8-year-old girl who used to get sent to Grandma's house for sneezing? College and the beginning of something new. College went by in a flurry of all-nighters, instant ramen, and heavenly independence. I graduated summa cum laude from the University of Michigan. Not that my folks noticed. They were too busy helping Rachel transfer to her third college in 2 years. But this is where the plot takes an unexpected turn. I got an entry-level job at Everett and Phillips Auction House in Detroit. I won't use the real name for obvious reasons, but if you're in the business, you probably know who I'm talking about. A genuine high-end establishment, many old money clients, that type of transaction. I began with their estate sales business, which involved documenting the belongings of wealthy individuals after their deaths. Not exactly glamorous, but it paid the bills. The breakthrough. My first several months were very standard, logging countless china sets, categorizing vintage furniture, and so on. Next followed the Kingston estate. Mrs. Kingston was an elderly widow who had died with no children, leaving behind what everyone assumed was a huge collection of costume jewelry. Rooms filled with the material? This is where those hours at Grandma Marie's came in useful. I'm looking through this stack of jewelry when something catches my attention. It's an Art Deco brooch. Nothing really showy, yet something about it felt different. The weight was unsuitable for costume jewelry. The clasping mechanism was far too complex for a copycat. I believe I spent my whole lunch break that day researching old jewelry markers and signatures. I ended up staying late at the office to use the company's membership to several antique jewelry databases. The more I looked, the more certain I got that this was not costume jewelry. It was the real stuff. Problem was, I was the new girl. Nobody would believe me if I claimed we had a potential treasure on our hands. So I did what the debate team taught me. I meticulously prepared my argument. I spent 2 weeks during lunch breaks and evenings learning everything I could about Art Deco jewelry authentication. I even used some of my pitiful excuse for savings to pay for an online gemology course. Finally mustered the guts to approach my boss, Mr. Harrison. I brought the entire presentation, which included comparative images, historical documentation, and the works. The conversation went something like this. My response: Sir, I think we might have something significant in the Kingston collection. Harrison, scarcely looking up from his phone, says, Sarah, we've already cataloged those as costume pieces. You are correct. I know, but look at these maker's marks. They match perfectly with Cartier's 1925 signatures. Harrison, finally paying attention. Where did you learn all of this? My reply was, I did some research. Long story short, the costume brooch sold for $47,000 at auction. It turns out that it was part of a limited collection created for some European set in the 1920s. But here's the real kicker. Harrison started to trust me after that. He began giving me other artifacts to authenticate. Suddenly, my pointless pastime of sorting antique jewels acquired real significance. I devoted myself to learning everything I could about vintage jewelry. I took every online course I could afford. I spent weekends at estate sales, researching items. Even began a small notepad to document various authentication procedures. My apartment looked like a jewelry scholar's fever dream, with walls covered with printouts of vintage hallmarks and certification guidelines. The auction house started getting results. I was discovering important items that others had overlooked, developing contacts with collectors, and knowing the market. My commission checks became larger. For the first time in my life, I was not simply surviving, I was also saving money. Family? Still remarkably uninterested. At Sunday dinners, which I still went to like a fool, the discourse went like this. Mom. Sarah's still at that antique shop, right? This is me. Auction house, and yes. Actually, I just authenticated a rare Tiffany piece. Rachel interrupts. Oh my God, speaking of jewelry. You guys have to see this charm bracelet I bought at the mall. But I didn't care anymore. For once in my life, I had discovered something wholly mine. Something I was actually excellent at. Something unrelated to being Rachel's sister or family disappointment. The Rothschild collection. Then came the Rothschild collection. This was about 2 years into my employment at the auction business. A massive estate. Old money family. There's a lot of buzz in the industry. I was part of the team that cataloged their jewelry collection. And that's when I noticed it. A fairly commonplace Art Nouveau piece that everyone else had missed. I spent 3 days investigating it. I barely slept. It turned out to be a piece from a famous French jeweler's private collection, which was supposed to have been lost during World War II. When it sold at auction for $238,000, Harrison summoned me to his office. I believed I was being promoted. Instead, he said something that completely changed the situation. "Sarah, you're wasting your talent here. You should be running your own authentication business." Initially, I shrugged it off. Me? Start a business? With what money? However, the notion took root. I began doing modest freelance authentication projects on the side. Word spread that I had a terrific site. Private collectors began contacting us directly. One night, I was sitting in my modest apartment, surrounded by jewelry manuals and authentication tools that I had gradually accumulated, when I had an epiphany. This is something I could actually do. I could create anything on my own. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I took out a large debt against my car. I emptied my savings account. I rented a small office space in a less desirable area of town. People believed I was insane. Perhaps I was. I transformed a storage room above a Chinese restaurant that was about the size of a college dorm room. The rent was low because it always smelled like Kung Pao chicken, and the Wi-Fi only functioned if you sat in the corner by the window. But it was mine. The struggle. The first few months were interesting, and by interesting, I mean scary. I'd awaken at 4 a.m. with cold sweats, calculating how many months till my savings ran out. Loan payments felt like a rope around my neck. My office furnishings comprised of, I purchased a card table from Goodwill. A chair I literally found on the curb. Don't worry, it was thoroughly cleaned. However, in the world of high-end jewelry, reputation and contacts are everything. And my experience at the auction house provided me with both. I started small by doing authentication work for local antique dealers. My fees were lower than the larger organizations, but my attention to detail was becoming known. Word spread. 6 months later, a watershed moment occurred. A dealer I had dealt with at the auction house inquired about a collection of Victorian-era brooches. The owner requested confirmation before selling. It turned out to be a massive collection, with pieces from 3 generations of families. I worked on it for 2 weeks straight, rarely sleeping and documenting everything. I discovered 2 extremely rare pieces that had been misinterpreted as later replicas. The owner was so delighted with my detailed analysis that she not only paid my fee, but also offered me a 10% commission when the piece sold. Was that a commission? $86,000. More money than I had earned in the preceding 2 years combined. Suddenly, my phone rang. A lot. Private collectors have heard about my knack for finding missed pieces. Estate lawyers seeking advice on inherited jewelry. Even my previous auction house began sending me authentication work. I'm quite sure Harrison was secretly helping spread the news. Thanks, boss. Scaling up. By year 2, I'd hired my first employee, Jenny, a fresh gemology graduate who reminded me much too much of myself at that age. She was extremely intelligent, yet she was neglected since she was quiet. She is now my head of authentication and is well worth her weight in gold. The firm expanded quicker than I could have predicted. Moved to a proper office downtown. Goodbye, Kung Pao chicken odor. Created a team of specialists. I've earned a reputation for finding misplaced items. You wouldn't believe how many important historical jewelry items get misinterpreted as costume jewelry in people's attics. Keeping it secret from my family. However, success came with its own set of obstacles. The bigger we became, the harder it became to keep it a secret from my family. They still thought I worked in an antique shop. Rachel would make these sarcastic remarks during family dinners. Rachel asks, "Sarah, I have some old jewelry I was going to donate to Goodwill. Maybe your little shop would want it?" Me, having just authenticated a $1.2 million Fabergé item that morning. "Sure, I'll look into it." Mom continues to introduce me to everyone as my other daughter. She works with old jewelry or something. Meanwhile, I was quoted in Forbes, luckily under my company name, and we had recently built our 3rd office. What's strange about it? Keeping the secret became almost enjoyable. Like this private joke with myself. I'd sit at Sunday dinner in my Target discount outfit, really Chanel, listening to Rachel speak about her entry-level marketing job, knowing I'd just closed a deal for more than her annual income. I even started playing tiny games with myself, such as wearing authentic Harry Winston pieces to family gatherings and seeing whether anyone noticed. They never did. Rachel once spent 20 minutes showing off her expensive $200 Michael Kors watch. I was wearing a vintage Patek Philippe that cost more than her automobile. Managing growth. However, the real challenge was managing growth. By year 5, we'd established offices in Detroit, Chicago, and New York. I spent more time on airplanes than in my own bed. We built a reputation for discretion. It turns out that many wealthy people want their jewels verified without the rest of the world knowing. The money was enormous. For example, we needed to hire a large team of financial advisors. Nonetheless, I maintained a relatively modest lifestyle. I purchased a nice, but not flashy house in a desirable neighborhood. I drove a high-end, but not obvious car. The only place I truly splurged? My home office. Advanced authentication equipment. The most effective security system money can buy. A custom-built vault to make Fort Knox envy. What's with the irony? They believed I was being frugal by aiding them. Mom would remark things like, "It's so sweet of Sarah to help out. She must be eating nothing but ramen to manage it." Meanwhile, I had just validated a collection, which earned me a commission greater than their mortgage. You know what's strange about success? The more you have, the more difficult it is to explain to others who have always perceived you as inferior. It's like explaining color to someone who has only seen black and white. They lack the necessary context. By this stage, my company was doing really well. We had the Midwest's high-end jewelry authentication industry cornered, and our reputation was solid gold, pun intended. But every Sunday, I'd travel to my parents' house for dinner, playing Sarah, the modest antique shop worker. The cognitive dissonance was becoming ludicrous. I'd spend my mornings on conference calls with Dubai collectors, my afternoons authenticating million-dollar pieces, and my evenings at my parents' house in carefully chosen normal clothes, eating Mom's overcooked pot roast while Rachel dominated the conversation with stories about her latest marketing triumph. Usually something like bringing her boss's coffee without spilling it. A defining moment. One Sunday is very memorable in my mind. I had just completed a huge transaction, authenticating a missing Cartier piece that had been resting in someone's safe deposit box for 40 years. Was it just the commission? 7 figures. I drove directly from the meeting to my parents' place, still euphoric from the successful authentication. She said, "Sarah, honey, is everything okay? Your clothes are looking a bit worn." "Oh, trying to save money," I said, wearing a $3,000 cashmere sweater that I had purposefully chosen for its subtle appearance. Rachel responded, "Well, if you'd gotten a real job instead of playing with old jewelry." Your dad. Rachel, be nice, not everyone can be as successful as you. I almost choked on my pot roast, trying not to laugh. The anonymous transfers monthly payments to my parents began about this time. Aunt Kelly informed me that they were struggling to pay Rachel's educational loans and medical bills. Mom casually stated that they might have to sell the house. I couldn't let that happen. Despite everything, it was still the home I grew up in. So I initiated an anonymous monthly transfer of $5,000 to their account. When asked, I said I was giving $1,000 by living on rice and beans. They imagined the rest came from Aunt Kelly or another family. Rachel, of course, claimed responsibility for inspiring family members to help. Watching Rachel spend my money. The money was helpful, but it also had unexpected consequences. My parents began treating me with a strange combination of sorrow and patronizing pride. As if I were some kind of noble poverty case, sacrificing everything to support the family. Meanwhile, Rachel's spending became more extravagant. She'd arrive for dinner with new expensive bags, claiming they were outlet finds. They weren't. I can recognize a genuine Gucci at 20 paces. She began taking extravagant vacations and bragging on Instagram about her fortunate life. I'm very convinced she used my support money for shopping sprees. However, I remained silent. The irony was simply wonderful. The MBA drama. Then came the college fund drama. Rachel revealed that she wants to return to school for her MBA. Another private university, of course. Only the best for the golden child. Mom contacted me in tears, explaining how they couldn't afford it. I say, maybe Rachel could look at state schools? They have good programs too. My mother. Oh honey, you don't understand? Your sister needs to maintain certain standards. But, speaking of assisting, may I increase my monthly contribution for a few years? I increased it to $7,000 per month. My accounts were unaffected. But witnessing them compliment Rachel for taking initiative with her education, while presuming I was living on ramen to help out, that stung a little. The actual kicker? I was giving a guest seminar at the same business school Rachel wanted to attend. My family didn't know that. The dean personally invited me to give a lecture on luxury goods authenticity and business growth. I had to come up with an excuse as to why I couldn't attend Sunday dinner that week. My own achievement started to feel like a distinct life. As if I were some kind of corporate superhero with a hidden identity. By day, I was running a multi-million-dollar authentication business. By night, well, on Sunday evenings, I was just Sarah, The disappointed daughter who worked at an antique shop. The breaking point, Thanksgiving. The weight of the untruth was becoming heavier. Rachel made rude remarks about my career on multiple occasions. Each time Mom apologized to her friends for my modest lifestyle. Every time Dad suggested I get a real job. I believe I always knew it would end dramatically. I just didn't expect it to implode so spectacularly on Thanksgiving. It began 2 weeks before the holiday. Mom called, weeping about her back discomfort. She had been diagnosed with a herniated disc, and the notion of cooking Thanksgiving dinner for 20 guests overwhelmed her. Now, I'd like to tell you that I offered to help purely out of goodwill. But really? I became tired of pretending her dried turkey was appetizing. My response: why don't I handle the food this year? I can have it catered. She replied, oh honey, we can't afford a caterer. My response: don't worry about the cost. I've been saving up. Mom, concerned. You're not taking out a loan, are you? I coordinated everything with a high-end catering firm that I use for business gatherings. They do incredible work, the kind of food that makes you wonder why you ever bothered to prepare yourself. It cost more than my folks thought I earned in 2 months, but whatever. Thanksgiving morning dawned, and I was feeling quite good. I had my laptop with me because I needed to monitor a major online auction in Hong Kong. This magnificent Art Nouveau necklace was for sale, and I had a customer who was interested in authentication if they won the bid. The lunch arrived on schedule, and everything was properly prepared. Rachel, of course, had to respond. Rachel inquired. Store-bought stuffing? Really, Sarah, Mom's is so much better. This is from the girl who once set off the smoke alarm while making toast. Mom was apologizing to everyone for not cooking herself, but you could tell they were enjoying the meal. Rachel shut up after tasting the maple-glazed Brussels sprouts, which, by the way, cost more per plate than her weekly grocery budget. I stepped away from supper and dessert to check my laptop. The auction was getting intriguing, and I needed to be prepared in case my client won. I set up in my old bedroom, which Mom had kept the same since high school. In the meantime, Rachel's room had undergone 3 renovations. That's when everything went wrong. I had left my authentication program running, with many tabs open that displayed various accounts and current agreements. Rachel came in without knocking, some things never change, to borrow my phone charger. She saw my laptop screen and realized this was her chance to finally expose how pathetic her older sister was. Rachel, smirking. Let's show everyone what Sarah's really been up to. Before I could stop her, she took my laptop and walked into the dining room. The big reveal: picture this: 20 people, including aunts, uncles, cousins, and my parents, filled with gourmet turkey and half drunk on pricey wine, which they mistook for Trader Joe's. Rachel's reaction. Time to see what kind of important work Sarah's doing on Thanksgiving. She flipped the laptop around triumphantly, apparently intending to disgrace me with whatever minor antique transactions she assumed I was working on. The room went completely silent. You could hear the fancy clock I got Mom for Christmas ticking silently. She believed it was a reproduction. My screen displayed, current account balance, $12.4 million, pending authentication contract, $485,000. Recent transaction, $1.2 million, Hong Kong auction, company's quarterly profit report, $4.2 million. Rachel's face shifted through 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. The final one landed somewhere between astonishment and nausea. She actually swayed slightly on her feet. Rachel whispers. This cannot be right. She said. Rachel, honey, what is it? Rachel, voice cracking. She's rich. Sarah's rich. Chaos ensues. If it was possible, the hush deepened even farther. Then Mom began giggling, really laughing. She said, don't be silly. Sarah works at that little antique shop. I rose up carefully, straightening out my basic cashmere sweater, which cost more than their monthly mortgage. Me? Yes. Actually, Mom, I own one of the largest jewelry authentication companies in the country. For years. Those antique shop comments? I authenticate pieces worth millions. That little business you never asked about? It has offices in 3 cities. Dad choked on the liquor. Aunt Kelly dropped her fork. Uncle Mike began coughing terribly. Then Mom's laughing transformed into something else. Her face turned red, then purple. She stood up so quickly that her chair tumbled over. Mom screams, you have millions, and you let us struggle? My response. Struggle? I send you $7,000 every month. She replied. While sitting on millions? Your sister has student loans. So there it was. Instead, Congratulations. Not. Wow, we're so proud. Just outraged that I hadn't given them more money. Rachel began to cry. Surprising, I know. Sobbing about how she deserved to know, and how I had betrayed the family. Dad joined in. My dad. How could you be so selfish? We're your parents. We raised you. That was when I lost it. Years of being disregarded. Years of dismissal. Years of being considered as a family disappointment. Everything poured forth. My response. Raised me? You shipped me off to grandma's every time I sneezed. You missed every achievement, every award, every milestone, because Rachel might feel left out. You never saved a penny for my college but took out loans for her private school. And now, you're mad that I built something for myself. The following 5 minutes were chaotic. Mom screamed about family obligations. Dad is yelling about ungrateful children. Rachel alternated between sobbing and demanding to know just how much money I had. Meanwhile, the fancy catering team attempted to serve dessert while seeming exceedingly uncomfortable. I grabbed my laptop, took my Hermes bag, which Mom had previously commended as a nice replica, and walked out. Behind me, I could hear Mom discussing how to spend my money, something about Rachel's MBA and a new car. As I went home in my sensible automobile, a limited edition BMW, my phone started filling up with texts. The family group chat burst. Rachel began posting on Facebook about hidden family wealth and selfish siblings. The aftermath. The days after Thanksgiving were like watching a cyclone hit in slow motion. Except that the hurricane represented my family and the debris symbolized my sanity. Let's start with SMS messaging. Within 1 hour of leaving supper, my phone had 47 missed calls. More than 200 messages. Mom followed this intriguing progression. 7:42 p.m. How dare you walk out on family? 8:15 p.m. We need to talk about this like adults. 9:03 p.m. Your sister deserves a share of your success. 10:30 p.m. I've already called a realtor about houses in better neighborhoods. 11:45 p.m. Why aren't you answering? This is your mother. Meanwhile, Rachel had become a full-fledged social media fighter. Rachel, on the other hand, had fully embraced social networking. She wrote an enormous rant on Facebook about how her millionaire sister had been hoarding wealth while watching her beloved family struggle. The comments section was insane. Distant cousins and former high school classmates, whom I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly formed strong ideas about my moral character. But this is the bit that really grabbed me. Rachel actually posted, all those years of me trying to help Sarah's career, giving her advice about moving up from that little antique shop, and she was secretly wealthy. The betrayal hurt so much I nearly threw my phone across the room. What was the only career advice she ever gave me? I suggest I try selling jewelry on Etsy. If you're unfamiliar with the term, flying monkeys occur when toxic family members send others to guilt trip you. Aunt Susan, whom I saw maybe once every 3 years, called to inform me that family is everything. Uncle Bob, who I'm pretty sure still believes I'm 12, emailed me a lengthy lecture on the importance of sharing wealth. Even my third cousin's wife's sister, how did she acquire my number, felt compelled to express her thoughts on family obligation. But the real fun began when they arrived at my workplace. I arrived in on Monday morning to find Mom, Dad, and Rachel sitting in our reception area. They informed Jenny, my receptionist, that they had an appointment for authenticating services. Rachel clutched her Michael Kors bag as if it was genuinely worth something. The conversation went about as well as one would expect. Your mother. We've discussed it as a family. I said. A family discussion, without the family member you're discussing. Mom, ignoring me. And we think it's only fair that you set up trust funds for everyone. Rachel responds. I need at least $2 million to start my new life properly. Dad said. And your mother and I would like to retire. We're thinking a beach house in Florida. This is me. Did you miss the part where I've been sending you $7,000 monthly? Rachel responds. That's nothing compared to what you have. You owe us. You're thinking, I owe you? For what, exactly? The years of being ignored? The missed graduations? The constant comparisons? Mama. Don't be dramatic, Sarah. We gave you everything. My response. No. I gave myself everything, and you know what? I'm done. Right there in my own office lobby, I took out my phone and canceled the monthly transfers to their account. Mom gasped as if I'd slapped her. Rachel began her phony crying performance, but quickly stopped when she saw it wasn't working. Then things became ugly. They refused to leave. I had to contact security. Seeing my 60-year-old mother being dragged out while yelling about ungrateful children was bizarre. Jenny asked whether I wanted to press charges. I said no. However, I did have their names placed on the building's do not admit list. The harassment lasted for weeks. New telephone numbers. Fake email addresses. Even tried to contact me through my company's customer service. I finally had to issue a formal legal notice, threatening harassment charges. Mom then played her final card. She called Grandma Marie, but here's the thing about Grandma Marie, she is wiser than all of them together. How did she respond? Good for Sarah. About time someone in this family succeeded on their own terms. Mom did not speak with her for 2 months after that. It has been 6 months since Thanksgiving. I relocated to a new home, with better security. I changed all of my numbers. What about the company? We are doing better than ever. It turns out that my family problems attracted several high-profile clients who respected my caution in the circumstance. Rachel continues to write passive-aggressive updates about toxic wealth and family betrayal. According to what I've heard, she is beginning her own jewelry authentication firm. Good luck on that. Mom and Dad finally stopped trying to contact me when my lawyer wrote them an official letter outlining how the harassment charges would affect their lives. They're now informing everyone that they never wanted my money anyway, and that they're praying for my salvation. What's the best part? For the first time in my life, I feel liberated. No more Sunday dinners full of sly insults. No more downplaying my accomplishments to spare their feelings. No longer financing for the Rachel show. My therapist believes I am finally establishing healthy limits. I say, I am finally living authentically. So, that is my story. Reddit? Thanks for allowing me to share it. Special thanks to the catering firm, who sent me a Christmas letter stating that the Thanksgiving meal was the highlight of their year. Edit, responses to common questions. Yes, I am still in treatment. No, I do not regret cutting them off. Yes, Grandma Marie is doing well. She's coming to visit next month to help me catalog a new collection. One last thing. To Rachel. I know you're probably reading this. What about the Cartier bracelet you're wearing in your most recent Instagram post? Definitely a fake. Just saying. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.